Galera, boa tarde. Infelizmente, minha câmera não está funcionando. Peço desculpas, tentei de tudo, não consegui. E eu estou muito feliz hoje de apresentar essa pesquisadora, a Laura Ramajo. Ela possui uma formação, ela é bióloga, formada pela Universidade do Chile. Ela possui mestrado em ecologia pela Universidade Autônoma de Madrid, na Espanha, e doutorado em mudanças globais pelo Instituto Mediterrâneo de Estudos Avançados, também na Espanha. Então, estou muito feliz. Muito obrigada, Laura. Thank you very much for being here for this talk. I'm very excited. I'm sure all the students are very excited as well. So, please, you can start whenever you want.
Thank you, Roberta, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm glad to be here today. And well, you can see in the title of my presentation that I'm going to talk about the studies with my team and we have been performing on understanding which is the role of environmental variability when we want to know more about which will be the impacts of climate hazards in several species, in marine species, and mainly in marine resources, where I have been focusing my research in the last year, working with oysters, with mussels, and with scallops, and many other species. So I'm going to start everything. Well, you know that we have a climate hazards in the ocean that is very important. It's the ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is a process in which ocean is capable and able to capture the CO2 that is present, the atmospheric CO2 that is present in the atmosphere, the CO2 that is present in the atmosphere. You can see this is the typical line or the typical time series that CO2 in the atmosphere has been increasing since industrial revolutions, and this has been also impacting in the CO2 concentration in the ocean. So you can see here as in red, CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing, also is increasing the CO2 in the ocean. This has important consequences in the ocean chemistry. And we can see also here in this graph how the pH in green, how is as CO2 in the ocean is increasing, the pH conditions are also decreasing, which is converting the ocean in more acidic, with more acidic condition. So this is very important because at the beginning was, okay, we have a place where to put the same CO2 atmospheric level that we have are impacting in the global temperature, but have important impacts in the ocean chemistry and the ocean function. The function of the ocean and also in the biota and these many species and the function and the ecosystems. So what we are expecting in the next future, in the near future, we are expecting that as CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing, we're expecting that the CO2 in the ocean is going to increase too, and also of course, the pH level are going to continue decreasing, mostly in those territories with colder temperatures, because CO2 is dissolving very better under colder temperatures than in warmer temperatures. So you can see that the pH condition here is another variable, but the pH condition is going to be decreasing more in the poles, in other zones with lower temperatures. This is important. Why this is important? Because it's impacting, ocean acidification is already impacting the marine life. Sometimes it's impacting positively, but also the most of the cases, and mainly in the organisms with cells, is impacting negatively. And sometimes there is no any change when you expose animals or we expose different species to ocean acidification. This is based on laboratory experiments, and this is why we are observing that what we are observing that organisms with cells are responding negatively to ocean acidification is because when we incorporate more CO2 in the water, there is a change in the carbon cycle and is related to a low pH, a decrease in the pH levels, but also a decrease in the carbonate ions and the calcium carbonate, that is the key element to construct and to build the cells of the skeletons of the organisms, like gastropods, mollusks, and many other species as the skeleton of the fishes. What we know about the impacts of ocean acidification based on experimental work in laboratory, but also at the laboratory, but also at field, we know that there are some winners and there are some losers. And as I said before, the loser is always or usually are the species with cells like oyster or like pterops. You can see here how the cells present some malformation and damage when you expose here. I'm going to try to put the okay, I got here. You can see here how this is cells of oyster that are exposed to low pH condition are responding, and how the different is with these cells that are exposed to control condition with normal, with current pH condition. Also, you can see when you expose to these species like pterops to ocean acidification, you can see at the electron microscopy that there is some important damage and malformation in the cells, but also there are some winners. There are these species that need the CO2 to photosynthesis, for example, the algae. And you can see here in this graph, in a meta-analysis that we performed in 2013, long time ago, where we analyzed all the experiments and studies that try to understand which were the impacts of ocean acidification in different species, that most of the negative impacts of ocean acidification of low pH level is in species with cells, like you can see mollusks, echinoderms, crustaceans, corals, or calcifying algae, but this is not like this. This is not happening with these species that needs or use the CO2 for their physiological activity and sometimes fishes also responding positively in terms of growth. But you can see here that most of the species with cells are responding negatively in terms of survival, calcification, and growth, and this is not happening. So we know that there are going to be some winners and some losers. Also, we know now in climate change that climate change is going to have a lot of loss and damage, but also will bring some opportunity for other species and communities. In 2010, we started working in Chile in different projects, trying to understand how these species, or how species with an important role at ecological and social perspective will respond to ocean acidification. So we start working with Concholepas concholepa. This is a key species of the intertidal and the subtidal. Perumithilus purpuratus is a small intertidal mussel that is an engineering species of the ecosystem. Also Mytilus chilensis, this species is very important in terms of the economy. There is aquaculture around this species in the south of Chile, very, very important. With this species is export to Europe, to the United States, and sustain a lot of employment and people. And also Argopecten purpuratus, this species is a native species of the Chilean coast that also present in the Peruvian and Ecuadorian coast, and is very small, this production, but it's very important in terms of tourism and many other aspects. I'm going to talk later more about that. And also some experiments with some calcifying algae like Corallina officinalis, and this species is a foraminifera. This is not for the Chilean coast, but I was working with this species during my PhD in the Mediterranean Sea because this species is very interesting to test how species are responding to environmental variability, as this species is an epiphyte species of seagrass Posidonia oceanica. And I'm going to show you these results at the end of the presentation, but it's very interesting how we perform this experiment in order to test if pH is going to move is going to be also stable, or is going to, or which is the role of move the fluctuation, what is the role of fluctuate these pH levels. Chile is a magnificent, it's a beautiful place, the coast of Chile, to perform experiment. It's a natural laboratory. This is mainly because this is the longest, I think it's the longest country in the world. So we have natural environmental gradients along the Chilean coast. We'll also have a lot of species that have different population along the Chilean coast. We have, for example, Concholepas concholepas. This snail is present from the north to the south of Chile. This Perumytilus purpuratus mussel also is present from the north to the south. So we have different population adapted to local conditions. So it's a perfect place to test some of these hypotheses about which are the role of the environmental variability when we want to know how different population of species is going to respond to climate change. These gradients is mainly influenced by the latitude. So we have a temperature gradient from the north to the south of Chile. This is the typical gradient that we have higher temperatures in the north of Chile, but they are decreasing to the south of Chile, near to the Antarctic. But also we have another gradients in terms of pH and also in terms of salinity, and this is because we have some natural process like upwelling and river discharge that are present so only in some specific parts of Chile. So here in this image of Vargas et al. Study in 2017, you can see here that pH are very different along the Chilean coast in different places. So this is a very good place. Chile is a very good place to test some ecological theories about how a species is going to respond to climate change. Also, we know now that there is another drivers like biological or metabolic process that can alter the pH condition along the coast, like for example the respiration and photosynthesis of algae or seagrasses. But also in Chile we have a lot of volcanoes, and we have but we have studied how some volcano activity have modified the pH condition of the coast due to the volcanic activity. I'm not going to explain this thing. There are some studies that I can show later, or maybe to send the literature, but only to know that pH is not a variability constant in the time and in the space. That we have a lot of drivers that can modify the pH condition along the coast. Here in this study that we performed in 2013 during my PhD, it was very interesting because we were trying to determine that the ocean acidification is a problem of the open ocean, because the pH in the open ocean is very stable and is very near to the 8.1. But in the coast, due to upwelling process, river discharge, but also volcano activity, metabolic process, and many other activities, pH is not so stable. So this can give you some idea about how species are responding to change in pH and how these species could be responding to ocean acidification in the future. So we have like a natural drivers that are modifying the pH in the coast. This is air stage, CO2 exchange, weathering, volcano activity, ecosystem process, community metabolism, water resident time and mixing process, and everything of that. But also we have important drivers that are developed in the coast, but also in terrestrial habitat that are influencing the pH condition of the coast. For example, mining, change in the land use, agriculture practice, or hydrological perturbation, eutrophication, the loss of habitats, and many others. So this is so important because, for example, agriculture is a very important driver of change in the pH because agriculture is using a lot of compounds in the process that finally discharge in the river and river discharge in the coast. So finally, there are important changes in the alkalinity levels and the pH level. So when we want to understand what is happening in terms of pH along of the coast, we have to know all the system and we have to monitor and capturing this environmental variability using oceanographic stations or different kinds of instruments to measure pH or CO2 or temperatures, because there are a lot of drivers that can be modifying the pH of water, when usually in the open ocean is only due to air-sea CO2 exchange process. But the coast is very complex. So this is why we find this kind of different response to ocean acidification at laboratory when we expose different species to ocean acidification future condition, that sometimes we find positive, negative, or neutral effect. It's because of that. It's because the species are living currently under this kind of environmental variability in terms of pH. But also I want to stress and highlight that the pH is not usually changing alone, because the coast is variable, and it depends a lot of natural and also, as I said before, anthropogenic variables and drivers. So usually pH is moving also with change in temperature, with change in oxygen condition, and also with primary productivity. So Chile also is a very good laboratory to understand how species are responding to this scenario about how species are responding to change in pH, but also to change in many other variables that are going to change in the future due to global warming, as ocean deoxygenation or change in the salinity levels. So this is upwelling. This is a natural process. It's a source of environmental variability at different scale, temporal and spatial, and it's a natural process where deep waters rises to the ocean surface, usually driven by different factors, but in Chile is usually favored by strong southwest and south winds that blow across the ocean surface and pushing the surface water away from the coast, and allow that deeper waters rise to the surface and replace these surface waters. These deeper water are very important because are rich in nutrients, so they usually upwelling system are sustaining very important fisheries around the world, but also these water are rich in PCO2, so they are low in pH and they are low in oxygen, and usually they are colder than surface water, and this is mainly due to a mineralization process that occur in the deeper waters, in the deeper ocean. So this is the situation that we have along the Chile. We have a permanent upwelling that is present during all the year in the north of Chile, but also we have some parts in the Chile, in the central south of Chile, with a seasonal upwelling, where upwelling is only present during the spring and the summer, and during the autumn and the winter we don't have deeper water upwelled to the surface, because they are not present. These kind of winds are not present due to activity of this Pacific anticyclone that is located in the north during all the year, but during the spring and during the summer is moving to the South Pole. So to the South Pole, you can see here that upwelling is a very important process. Is, as I said before, is sustaining a lot of fisheries, and is very important in terms of fish security. Because provide fishes and many others and many other species for many countries, but we are expecting that due to global warming, this upwelling is going to be increased in terms of intensity and frequency. We can think that, okay, we are going to have more nutrients in the water column, so we expect more phytoplankton blooms in the water column. So we could expect that is going to increase also the fishery production. But it's not like this, because I'm going to present in the next slide, but this is the projection that we expect in the 4 more important upwelling system. Here is the Humboldt Core system, and we expect in the south, in the central south of Chile, we expect an increase in the intensity and frequency, when, as I said before, usually is only present during the spring and during the summer. Why is not a very good scenario? Because upwelling has a very small and optimal window of optimal window. We have here like the intensity of that upwelling. We can have a weak upwelling when these winds are very weak. There is no possible that water from the deep reach the surface, so these nutrients are not going to reach also the surface, so it's not going to occur this phytoplankton bloom, so it's not working. But if we have strongest winds and upwelling intensities, and also strongest upwelling intensity, it's going to happen that the turbulence and advection process in the ocean is going to also increase, and usually this nutrient is not going to stay near to the coast, where we expect that retains for the phytoplankton bloom is going to move outside to the open ocean, where there is no possibility to produce phytoplankton bloom, or that phytoplankton blooms impact on the fisheries and aquaculture, on all the activity that is related to the coast. So this is the problem. So we are expecting also this increase in the intensity of that upwelling. So we expect that also the productivity of the coast is going to decrease, with important impacts in the fisheries and the productivity and the primary productivity of the coast, with important impacts in the socioeconomic sector in many of this upwelling system. Also, if this upwelling system these upwelling events are going to be strong in terms of intensity and duration, we are going to have here water with lower pH condition, lower oxygen condition, and colder, that also impact the physiology of the species that are living here in the coast, with important impacts. And I'm going to show you some results of what happened with this intensity is increasing in the coast. Aquaculture, I'm going to focus in the aquaculture because I have been working in the last year with the scallop aquaculture in the north of Chile. At this moment, Chile has more than 3,000 aquaculture spaces designated to aquaculture. Usually is for salmon, for mussel, abalones, and more recently in algae. But you can see here that we have species that introduced, but also we have some species that are native, like a Chilean oyster, the northern scallop, and also different species of mussels, and gracilaria, that is a native algae. And also you can see here that we have usually the most of the old fish species dedicated to aquaculture are fishes and are introduced, and also we have the Pacific oyster, and I think the Pacific oyster and the red abalone and the Japanese abalone as species introduces in terms of mollusks. As I said before, also aquaculture is very important in terms for Chile. Is annual produce is one of the one of the most important countries in production of by aquaculture with more than 1.3 million tonnes. The majority of these species are exported to United States and Europe, and also to China, and is supporting or is generating more than $5 billion per year, and also is directly employing over than 60,000 people. I'm going to focus in the scallop aquaculture in Chile that is happening in a small bay in the north of Chile, very, very small bay. Here is Tongoy Bay, some part of the most of this production of these species, the northern scallop, is here. We have, like a long time ago, natural banks of these species, but now is mostly, we have only a small natural bank here, but the most of these species is culture under aquaculture activities. And we have also here in Guanaqueros Bay and here, but the 91% of the national landing is occurring here. With not too much landing, is only 4,000 tons of landings in terms of production, but is supporting for this small bay more than $5.5 million from export, usually to United States, Spain, and France, usually. They are trying now to sell to China and to China. But it's very important because it's not only the activity that is employing a lot of the people that is living here and sustain a very important socio-ecological system, is also important in terms of tourism. There are a lot of tourism dedicated to these species. You can, the most of this production is exported, but you can only eat these species here. So there are very good places to spend the summer with beach and everything. So there is a tourism industry dedicated to these species, not only for the aquaculture. But this species is culture under a semi-permanent upwelling condition that is not so good in terms of, okay, we have a lot of primary production, but it's not so good because you can see here the temperature, oxygen, and pH level are very variable. So this species is usually exposed to stressful conditions in terms of temperature, oxygen, and pH level, and usually this is happening, and this variability is happening during the spring and the summer when the winds, the south and southwest winds are more intense. So you can see that this season, spring and summer, are usually very stressful, physiologically stressful for these species. So why put here, or why develop an industry under this environmental condition and not in other place with lower environmental condition or lower physiological stress for these species? And this is because of that, because upwelling is producing or is related with a high during the summer, and during the spring is related with a high primary production. There is a lot of food in the water, so this is so important to maintain the industry of these species. Why food is so important? Because we know now that food is a key aspect to consider when we want to, the availability of food is a key aspect to understand or to monitor the potential impacts of climate hazards in the ocean. And you can see here in this meta-analysis that we performed also a long time ago, that when you expose to species to ocean acidification, but you are supplying low concentration of food, these effects of ocean acidification are negative. The impacts are negative, but if you provide food, enough food during the experiment, this is not happening. We have positive effects even, or no effects of the ocean acidification. So this is so important. When we revise the experiments in the Crocker, we realize that the most of the experiments don't provide food. during the experiment to the species when you expose to ocean acidification and many other ocean or different levels of oxygen, because you change the water condition and you impact also the alkalinity, and you don't want to impact the alkalinity, you only want to change the pH levels. So this is so important because probably when we find this, we did this study, probably some of the impacts of the magnitude of the impacts are higher than we that usually is. No, it's because you have to know very well what kind of food you need during the experiments to only to test the ocean acidification role in this experiment, or the real impact of the ocean acidification. So this is so important, and this is why even when pH condition or when oxygen condition or temperature condition are not very well, or there is a lot of they're very good, or there are a lot of variability in the environmental condition, this is why this bay is a very good place to put this kind of industry, because the animals on the species have the food necessary to express the different physiological mechanisms to respond and to express to respond to stressful environmental conditions. So how we perform or we test our hypothesis about that environmental variability is a key aspect to consider when we try to understand the impacts of the different climate hazards in the ocean on these different species. We perform some experiments at the laboratory where we expose animals to future or different environmental conditions, bubbling CO2, controlling the temperature, or bubbling nitrogen to change the oxygen levels. But also we have experiment at field to understand the entire context of the environmental variability, because usually in laboratory you can control at most 3 different variables, because if not, the experiment is so big and it's not easy to follow. And also, as I said before, it's very important to measure the environmental variability in the different habitats where the species is going to live, because this give us important information about this kind of potential adaptation to the environmental and to the habitat of these species. So this is the first experiment that we performed in 2015 in the scallops. We're trying to understand which the role of the food availability, the food supply on this scallop, on Angulopeta purpuratus. So we exposed for 30 days this species, a small juvenile stage, to current ocean pH and future pH levels, and we realized that this species is responding better to low pH levels, and if you even give them more food, the performance is even good. So you can see that metabolic rates are increasing under low pH condition. Also the growth rates are increasing on the low pH condition. Calcification rates are also increasing, and also they are eating more if you are ingesting more food when you under low pH conditions, and if you give more food here, you have even better performance, physiological performance. And this is like okay, this species seems to be adapted to the environment, right? Because usually his species has been living under this condition, on the low pH condition, always, and because we know now that food availability is because this is the reason, because these species can live under this upwelling condition. So after that, we try to understand also how they are responding to pH, temperature, and oxygen. You know that, as I said before, that upwelling water are lower in temperature, are low in oxygen condition, and also are low in pH. So we try in the laboratory that we test how they are responding in terms of growth and classification to change in one variable, but also in combination with other with other variables. And you can see here that on the colder condition, when you expose the scallops to for example to this is the upwelling condition, colder water, low in oxygen and low in pH, you have lower net calcification rates, and also you have lower growth rate. And if you have a higher temperature, this response is inverted. So this is very important because we know now that if you only test one variable, is you don't know the environment or you don't monitor the environment, you can providing some result that is not like they are not real because this species is not only living on the low pH condition, they are living also on the low pH or on the low temperature and the low oxygen condition. And so this is important to test how the combination of the different variables are affecting these growth and net classification rates and other physiological traits. But after that, we were to the field, and okay, we want to know what is happening in the field. And this is very interesting because for 1 year, we have like a small culture of scallops in the Tongoy Bay, at the Tongoy Bay, and it was so interesting the results that we obtained, because we know now that during the spring and during the summer usually is where we find the stronger upwelling events, and we can find that the growth during the spring and the net calcification during the spring and there are the lowest values that we found, and also the higher mortality rate is because when we expose this animal to upwelling conditions, we can expect that there is an impact in the water. But this is very interesting because when these upwelling conditions are related with an increase in the temperature of the water, what is happening during the summer next to the spring, we have inverted results, no? So we can find, we could corroborate our experiment in the laboratory. So it was very good experiment in collaboration with the industry, and now we can understand why there are some events where we have a stronger or higher mortality events in comparison with other seasons where upwelling or no upwelling is present. And it's so important because here is like all the animals, but we expose different animals at different reproductive states, and we realize that not all that size, that even when food is important, size is a very important also characteristic to determine the real impact. And you can see here that most the growth or the calcification rates is very different if the animals are larger or are smaller. And this kind of the pattern here is mainly due to that the higher animals are responding very bad to upwelling condition and not the juvenile state. So this is important. When you expose juvenile or you expose reproductive animals are not responding at the same way to upwelling condition. Also, I'm going only to present because we are trying to finish this year this manuscript, but also we are interested in determining which is the impact in other characteristics that are very important. For example, for the industry, there is how is is tasting the animal when you eat it, no? So one way to determine that is to measure the muscle carbohydrate sugar content in the muscle, and we can see that even we have important difference during the different seasons, and also is depending also of the size of the organism. So we are trying to also, now we are discussing this result, but we are trying to understand how the content of sugar and lipids are also impacted by upwelling, and how this could have important consequence for the industry and the value of the animal in the market. So I'm going to finish right now about this, but I also want to know that we were working in these mussel species, and as I said before, river discharge are very important. They also important drivers to consider when we are trying to determine the pH or the ocean acidification impact in different species. Here we were trying to test how species or different population of these mussels were responding, if were they living in a zone impacted by a river discharge or not. This wasn't a marine zone, and we did a reciprocal transfer, and we can find that the species living on the river discharge condition usually have lower, this is depressed in terms of oxygen consumptions, but also they have lower growth rates, lower net calcification, because usually river discharges are acidic, and higher also mortality. But when you move a population from one river influenced population to a marine zone, you have the opposite effect. So we can here test how the phenotypic plasticity of this species, but also the local adaptation to the environment. And this is very important because we can select which population are going to respond better to the climate change, and which species are compromised in the future doing this kind of experiment. Also, we published, this is very important, this is very interesting study what we performed. It was horrible because it was so difficult to work with this kind of species. It's a foraminid that is epiphyte of seagrass Posidonia oceanica. It's so interesting because this foraminid is exposed to continuous daily fluctuation in terms of pH due to the metabolic activity of these seagrass species. So we expose these species to a fluctuating and stable pH condition, and we can find here that when we put the animal, or we expose the animals to low condition pH, stable low condition, there was a negative impact in the net population growth in comparison with the stable high population that is usually when you do in the laboratory, because you expose to animals to 8.1 and 7.6, 7.4. But when you when we expose these animals on these foraminiferous to fluctuating pH change, also moving between 8.1 or 8 and 7.4, but also very low fluctuating, you can see here that this species has the mechanism to respond, and there is no effect in comparison with this treatment. And this is so important because this is confirming that living under environments with high environmental variability is providing like a way to respond to ocean acidification and others climate hazards. So is because that is confirming, because that we have to know which is the environment and the environmental variability of the habitats of the species before we test different climate hazard at laboratory or at the field. So finally, I want to finish that in Chile, this meta-analysis that was published in 2007 these authors found that that the impact, the level of the magnitude of the impact is going to be as I say before, is highly related if this species is living under a small variability or over or under high variability. And you can see here that these species that are living under high PSCU2 or pH level are responding better to pH than those that because it's that those that are living in a small variability environmental condition. So to finish, I want to that river disturbs, upwelling events, and metabolism of photosynthetic organisms create environmental variability in coastal ecosystems in terms of many variables, not only pH, but also temperature and salinity and oxygen. That is, environmental variability of the habitats is influencing the direction of the physiological, mineralogical, and biogeochemical process as survival. Coastal habitats that are influenced by river discharge of a wetland ecosystem are very key, are a key space or territories to test evolutionary mechanisms to respond to climate change. That food availability plays an important role in determining the resilience of the species to climate change, and that regular variation in pH and many other variables is providing also some like insurance for these species to the future. So to finish, I only want to highlight that before you perform experiment trying to understand how species are going to respond to climate change, you have to know the environment where they are living, and after that you can modify and mimic this condition and adapt this condition at laboratory to understand how this species is going to respond and this population are going to respond to climate change. So this is, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much. It's amazing, amazing, amazing talk. I have like 5 questions. Can I start? Maybe I'll just start with one. It's a difficult one, I think. How can you say we can like climate proof the aquaculture sector? I know you've been saying that it's very like we need to know the local conditions so we can actually think about strategies. But can you think about a strategy that we can use across regions, you know, in tropical and temperate, that can actually climate proof production in aquaculture?
Oh, well, I don't know, Roberta. Yeah, it's a very difficult question. So I don't know how we can think about this. So you are trying to say me that can you repeat the question, please, Roberta? So
yeah, sure. I just been thinking like how can we prepare like the sector, the aquaculture sector to climate change, to climate change impact?
yeah, there is a lot of now interest to move, for example, to move these aquaculture centers to open ocean, because the open ocean is not presenting this kind of environmental variability, and because it's not only these natural processes, but it's also the activities that we are performing, for example, in the terrestrial habitat, not that finally is going to impact in the coast. So, for example, here in Chile, we are trying to now with models to try to find like open ocean spaces for the aquaculture in terms that move these centers far or not so far from the coast in order to not suffering this kind of environmental variability. But we know now that this is going to be expensive because now it's very it's very it's very easy to move, easier to move from the coast to these spaces with a small ship, right? And this kind of open ocean aquaculture, or move the operational, or the operation to the open ocean, is going to suppose more cost for these aquaculture centers. So there are also some aquaculture centers that are moving inland, but this has a lot of cost in terms, for example, in water and source. For example, in Chile, we have a lot of problem with the water availability. So I don't know where is the response, but there is also, I know there is a lot of expectations about that aquaculture is going to support the next, is a key sector in the food security for many countries and even for the world. So for example, I have another example. For example, in Tongoy Bay, they are okay. We don't have very long time series, but we are thinking that, yeah, the pH condition and the oxygen condition are lower in the time. So now there are a group of women, of fisher women, that are like they are like culturing seagrass. They are culturing algae, and you know that algae is, for itself's metabolism, is going to increase the pH and the oxygen condition. So there is like these kind of strategies increase put this kind of aquaculture, the mussels of the scallop with also algae to increase the pH and to increase the oxygen levels in this base. But also there is now I think a pilot program in Chile that are trying to return the cells to the water in order that this calcium carbonate that you take from the water with the cells return to the water. There are some strategies that they're using to cope with climate change.
That's very nice. Thank you. I have just one more question. I'm so sorry, guys. Do you think selective breeding of oysters or scallops, do you think this strategy it's good on the long term, like to fight climate change as well, to like keep production?
Oh,
Because I have my doubts about it.
yeah, I have a doubt too, because um, it could have like it can have a negative impact at the end, no? Because you are selecting special animals, and you are like stopping the evolutionary process of this species. So I don't know. I don't know. For example, if I have to select species, I will find, or I will try to use species that are living under high environmental variability than those that are living under a stable habitat, because you obviously you are not going to spend any energy to respond or to express any biological mechanism if you are living under optimal condition. But also you have this problem that if the condition is going to change, you don't have this biological mechanism to respond. So I will focus in these spaces, on this part of the coast with high environmental variability, to find this key, or this like what is the name, the climate refugees, no, for these spaces, because you can find here there are a lot of biological mechanisms and evolutionary process to respond to climate change.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you.
We have questions on the chat here from Mariana. Mariana, do you wanna ask, or do you want us to read it?
Mariana has problem with the connection, I've seen. So she is
Okay.
on YouTube.
So, Laura, thank you for the presentation of your work. Very interesting. As you mentioned, fishing aquaculture in Chile is very important and typically a tradition. I would like to know if you and your lab team have encountered any difficulties with fishing producers or with partnerships with industry to protect them. Here in Brazil, we encounter different kinds of difficulties in both marine and forest ecosystems.
Okay, not with me. I haven't, no, not with me, because I have been working with this industry. In this part of Chile, the industry is so um, it's so interesting to collaborate with science and find solutions to the problem with scientists. So usually, if we work with them, we design the project with them, we find solution with them, we provide the information, and they take finally they took the final decision. No, but usually we don't have been this partnership has been very good, even that this oceanographic station that we have in the north of Chile, in Tongoy Bay, is mainly sustained by the aquaculture industry. We maintain the equipment and we analyze the data, but they are protecting the equipment. They provide even money to calibrate the instrument. And so they are so interesting because they are using this data to take and to make decision every day. So if they change the the different operation activities that they have, or they have to accelerate because I don't know, a whaling is coming, so I'm going to take the higher or the older animals before they die, or many of that. So I think this it depends on how community and how the different communities are related with and also, well, I have the opportunity to work in a center that is very related with the people and trying to solve and resolve problems with the community. So it has been a very good experience with them.
Thank you so much, Laura. I, your presentation is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina.
Do we have more questions?
We have one question from Mariana from YouTube. She's asking, just let me put it here. Let's just see if someone else has some questions.
I have one question. Thank you very much for your talk, Laura. I really learned a lot. It's very interesting. I didn't know, I don't know anything about marine ecology, so it was awesome. I'm curious about this mussel farming industry. If it's something that is historical, or is something that is recent, that's established in that area?
No, this is a native species, but in the last, I don't remember the last, but I think the last 20 years has been a key activity in the south of Chile. And mainly is exported to Spain and to Europe usually. So this is the question here?
Yeah, it's more, it's something cultural from the region, or is something that the government is
No.
giving incentives to
No, this is
establish?
This is cultural. The salmon, yes, the salmon is like a government in the 1970, was doing a lot of work to bring the salmon industry to the south of Chile, and now, well, this is an aquaculture that is trying to make for using more sustainable ways because we have a lot of problem in the south of Chile with this kind of industry. This is a non-native species. There are a lot of important problems with the communities. But this is only happening with the salmon. But the mussel species, the mussel that is like a native species is like, and it's very interesting. Is you had the opportunity to go to Chiloé Island. This is an island in the south of Chile. It's very impressive. Like the culture and the tourism and the food, and it's also around this species, and it's so good. I miss a lot because here in the United States I can't find it.
I have another question about that. I saw the picture when you showed the shellfish, and I was curious to know that this species only occurs in that region, or does it occurs here in the Atlantic Ocean?
The mussel?
Yeah.
No, it's only in Chile. It's a native of Chile, and only in the south of Chile. It's not presented. It's only presented in the south of Chile, not in the north of Chile.
Okay, because I found this one in Rio de Janeiro, and
the scallops.
Yeah, the scallops.
Okay. I don't know where is that, because it's only in the Pacific coast.
This is not Brazil. This is not from Brazil. I don't think the species from Brazil.
It's not from Brazil, because I
don't
found
think so.
Here in Rio de Janeiro, and I saw that picture, and I thought, wow, it looks like.
Oh.
But
you found on the beach?
Yeah, on the beach.
Okay, you have now. Well, find the spirit, their life organisms, because maybe you have it, because really it's only in the Pacific coast. Yeah.
It's just because I went to a restaurant here and they had the shell of other species from Canada, but I've never seen that in Brazil, this kind of shell here, like on the beach. I saw in restaurants, even here, na Tijuca.
Yeah, it was on the Barra da Tijuca beach that maybe somebody from the restaurant
probably
took to the beach.
Or maybe not, and you have now a paper. Maybe you can find it. Yeah, Mariana made a question, but it's in Portuguese. Sorry, I can't understand. So, if you can translate to English, please.
What is your vision about how the invertebrate communities will be in 2080 in Chile, like the coastal that's difficult too.
Oh, well.
How do you see the invertebrate communities from Chile in 2080?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think the wild populations maybe.
Yeah, I think that, as I say, I think that we have a lot of species that are going to be adapted to the future, because we have a lot of environmental variability right now, and we also have even, I don't know, pH values that are projected by the end of the next century. But I don't know, because we can expect, for example, that even this scallop species is going to continue living in this kind of environment. Probably we are going to have problem about the quality of these species, because probably as we have been seen in the last experiment, there are important impacts in the quality on the muscles, but also in the cells. So usually the people doesn't like to buy animals with the cells that it is not important now, but you know the cells have like a peristrichum. This is an organic layer that is on the shell, and usually the people, when you find a mussel, for example, in the south of Chile under ocean acidification condition, this layer is not in very good condition, but it's because it's for that, because this layer is to protect the shell. And usually the people doesn't like to buy this animal because think that is not very good. And also we were discussing before this seminar that some organoleptic property of the organisms are going to change. So the people probably is going to pay less for this kind of organisms. But I think that the coast of Chile is going to be probably better than other coasts. And we have to focus on these communities and in this population that are living under higher environmental variability to protect this kind of populations, because we have like a climate refugee there, and then we can put this animal in other places, no? Because probably this population living under stable condition are not going to support the change, or not going to have the possibility to change, to respond to climate change hazards. Marcus.
Oh yeah, hi Laura. Just maybe silly question. I'm not a marine biologist either, but most of the worry seems about acidification of the oceans, of the waters. But what about oxygen concentration? It reduces as well with increase in CO2 levels. But is that going to be a problem? Or
Yeah, I think Marcus, okay, this is going to be recorded, right? But I think ocean acidification is going to be a problem, but oxygen, desoxygenation is going to be a big problem in the ocean, because now we are losing a lot of oxygen, even in the deeper ocean. So this is because the higher temperature of the waters are driving ocean acidification. And this is very important because now the species that cannot move, okay, under low oxygen condition are going to die, because there are some mechanisms, but these mechanisms are not so good in many species to respond to low oxygen condition. Even in these scallop species, we have, I remember like 4 or 5 years ago, we have a period with 3 weeks of no oxygen in the water column, because we have a very strong upwelling event, and I think that we lost the 60% of the production of the scallops in this experimental, but also the industry. And it was not because the pH values, because there was not any oxygen in the water column. And the species that have the ability to move, they are competing with these species with higher oxygen. So now you have in the water column, the species are moving, and there are a lot of oxygen, and now they are in a small spaces competing by oxygen. So this is going to be a higher problem.
Too bad.
Yeah.
What? Oh.
It's not so good working on impacts of climate change. So now working more in resilience. I'm trying to live, because it's only bad news, but we are trying to find some solution about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have time just for one last question, and there is one at the chat.
Okay, I'm on the biggest about the invasive species lost worldwide, and this climate change and raised. Well, yes, this is another problem of change in the water condition. For example, in Chile, that usually we have a cold coast because of welling event. Now we have species like this small is Fragata portuguesa. We have now Fragata portuguesa in the coast of Chile, and it's very the coast of this the impact of this species in the tourism is so huge, because during the summer, a lot of places in Chile has to close the beaches because these species can kill people. So, for example, we were protected because our water were cold, historically colder, and now we have this kind of species. So and still we don't know how they are competing with other species that are living in the ecosystem. But yes, this is another the problems of the of the climate change in the oceans.
Thank you, Laura.
Is there any more questions? Okay, so Laura, thank you so much for your talk.
Thank you so much, Laura. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And I know that there are a lot of terrestrial ecologists here. So I hope that move to the oceans or trying to connect ocean with terrestrial habitat, because it's so important to do this connection. So thank you so much for the invitation.
And you have to come to Brazil, and I will take you to Florianópolis. And we have like the biggest bivalve aquaculture site in Brazil. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, thank you, Roberta. Next year I will be in Belém in the COP30, so we can talk. Maybe we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.